This story happened at Isabel's workplace. Isabel worked part-time at a convenience store about 3 days a week. She is relied on by her coworkers and the store manager. For some reason, there was one person who was jealous of her. She was a queen bee who had the longest career in the store. She often drives Isabel hard and is always sarcastic with her. One day, when Isabel came to work, the office was noisy somehow. The queen bee was lecturing the girl with a raised voice. When Isabel asked about the situation, the queen bee said she caught a shoplifter. Moreover, the queen bee assumed that the girl was Isabel's daughter. Isabel was puzzled by this. Why was the queen bee so sure the shoplifter was Isabel's daughter? And how will this end? I work part-time at a local convenience store about 3 days a week. I get along well with my coworkers, and it's easy to work with them. And I know that the manager relies on me a lot. Even though I'm a convenience store clerk, it's rewarding. But there is one person in such a nice workplace who is very troublesome. She is the so-called queen bee, who has been working the longest. Today, I want you to listen about her. I've been working for about a year now, but from the very beginning, I knew she was the queen bee. She was more bossy than other coworkers, and the way she talks or her attitude were completely different. But she plays the hypocrite in front of the manager. I would say she's cunning. We have a flexible work schedule, and no one else has a title, and we're all equal. But the queen bee seems to think that she is the leader. She is a control freak and likes to oversee people. When she gets angry, she makes up a story and tells the manager, so no one can talk back to her. Well, I'm one of them. In fact, I hear that store managers would get replaced, and the queen bee has been working longer than the current manager. Because of that, I don't think the manager can say anything to the queen bee. Besides, the manager seems to think work can be done smoothly if he lets her do as she wants. Everyone works so hard when she's around. Young kids don't like trouble, but part-timers hate trouble, right? Because it's hard to find another job. So we part-timers don't talk back to the queen bee, so work will be done. She annoys us, but we don't want to make it any worse than it is now. However, I don't know why she is so hard on me among the part-timers. She told me this before. You better not get cocky, just because everyone relies on you. Behind your back, they're bad-mouthing you, so you should just believe what I say. The manager seems to be relying on you somehow, but that's only because you're an easy person to deal with. He doesn't expect anything from you, so don't misunderstand. By the way, I never got cocky or misunderstood that I was expected. But I think I was an eyesore to her, so she made sarcastic comments on and on. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I listened to her. But the queen bee wasn't happy with my attitude, and she asked me, "Will you cover my shift next week? I'd like to go on a trip, but it's for short notice, so I'm looking for someone to fill in for me. But would you cover for me, right? I know you've covered for Alice before. You're reliable, so this time you can cover for me, right?" She was so pushy and talked to me like that. I could cover for Alice because I was available, but I was not a yes man, so I declined her proposal. I said to her, "I'm sorry, but I have plans next week too." Then she became furious and, "Huh? Are you picky or what? You would cover for everyone but me? You play the hypocrite, but you're actually mean. If you don't cover for me, I'll tell everyone what you really are. Are you okay with that?" She was talking on and on. I got scared of her, and in the end, I said I would cover for her. I still regret that, but I was scared of not knowing what she was going to do to me. I told everyone about her, and the same thing happened before, and someone reported it to the store manager. And at that time, the manager seemed to have given the queen bee a warning, but the person who reported it was bullied more by her. And she ended up quitting. I shuddered when I heard it. Because of that reason, we all think it would be better to obey the queen bee. And I'm happy to work here too, except for the queen bee, so I don't want to quit if possible. That's why I'm just holding out for now, I guess. However, if I ever lose control of my anger, I'm scared when I think about that. Stress is building up, so it's nice to have an opportunity to vent like this. If I want to vent again, I would be glad you listened to me. Thanks for your time today. Participants in a forum seemed to be surprised at the attitude of the queen bee at Isabel's workplace. It's hard for a part-timer to deal with a problem that even the store manager can't solve. Will Isabel have to continue to endure this, or will the day come when the queen bee will regret it? Everyone was thinking about this, and after a while, Isabel seemed to come back to the forum. Hey guys, it's been a while. Actually, there was an incident at the convenience store where I work. It's being resolved now, but it's something involving the queen bee. I wanted you guys to hear the interesting results, so I came back. When I went to work at the convenience store as usual, there was some kind of commotion in the office. I looked into it to see what was going on, and the queen bee was shouting and making a noise. I just came to work, so I didn't feel good, and then I saw a girl, not even a part-timer, sitting in a chair. Apparently, the queen bee was raising her voice against the girl. I listened carefully, trying to hear their voices. She said to the girl, "I can't let my guard down because young people are tricky these days. Why don't you just come clean? You did it right. Your mother will be here soon, so tell me everything." From what she said, I understood that the girl had done something and the queen bee was angry because of it. In the meantime, it was getting close to time to work, so I went into the office to clock in. "Good morning." Just in case, I greeted the queen bee, and for some reason she grinned and started talking to me. "Ah, here you are. I've been waiting for you so long." So I asked her, "Well, really?" And the queen bee said, "Yes, you know what's going on. Your daughter shoplifted, so I'm calling the police." "What? My daughter?" I was surprised, and she kept talking. "How do you discipline your kid? She shoplifted, but she doesn't admit it at all. In fact, there were snacks in this girl's bag, though. Anyway, if you pay for these snacks on the girl's behalf." I was told and surprised, and then looked into the girl's face. I thought I had seen her somewhere before, but she was not my daughter. I rushed to explain it to the queen bee. "Well, you misunderstood something. I don't have a daughter," I told her. Then she said, "Huh? You can't lie. She may be a bad girl who shoplifts, but she's still your daughter. Or because her mother is mean, that's why she became delinquent and shoplifted." The queen bee told me like that and laughed so hard. I was so scared of her. I've been married for 15 years and I really don't have a daughter. That's why I didn't get why she misunderstood and assumed that I have a daughter. I was so confused and looked at the girl and she was crying. I talked to the girl to find out the facts anyway. "Hey, can you tell me again? Did you really shoplift?" I asked her, and she said no. I kept telling her, but she didn't believe me. "I want to go home. Please let me go." The queen bee heard her and raised her voice again. "It's too late now to tell a lie just because you got caught shoplifting and got scared. I can't let a shoplifter go without punishment. Are you in middle school, aren't you? If you do something wrong, you deserve to be caught by the police. Didn't your mother tell you that? But because you aren't educated properly, I guess you may be a victim in a way." The queen bee said this as if the girl really shoplifted. I thought she might be reported to the police, but she is still in middle school, so I thought it would make sense to contact her family first. "Why don't you call the police if you can't reach her family? Let's call her family first." I suggested that to the queen bee. Then she laughed so hard again. "What are you talking about? Her parent is in front of me. Don't play dumb. You need to go with this girl to the police." The queen bee said to me like that, so I said, "Like I said, I'm not her mother. I really don't have a daughter. I mean, I don't have any kids. You misunderstood me." But she kept saying, Yeah, you're crazy. I'm going to call the police right now so you can say the same thing. They'll find out sooner or later." Instead of listening to me, the queen bee completely assumed that the girl was my daughter. The girl was also confused, and she said, "She isn't my mother." She said that, but it made the queen bee more and more angry. The queen bee said, Yeah, you guys should be quiet if you don't admit you're mother and daughter. Let the police decide what to do. I can't believe both of you are lying." I thought the more I tell the queen bee, the more she gets upset. That's why I ignored her and talked to the girl. "I don't know if you shoplifted or not, so can I contact your parents anyway? Wouldn't you rather your parents come to you than the police out of the blue?" I asked her. "Yes, I know my parents' phone number, but I didn't really do anything," the girl said, and told me her parents' phone number. The queen bee stopped me, but I made the call. I thought the queen bee would understand if I made it clear. I could talk to her parents, but they both seemed to take a long time to get here from their work, so we had to wait for a while. I felt sorry for the girl, but couldn't let her go. I got to work, and the queen bee had to keep an eye on her. I really wanted to watch the girl, but the queen bee wouldn't say yes. I worried that she was watching the girl, but something worse happened. To my surprise, a police officer came into the office a short time later. The queen bee had caught me off guard and called the police, and we ended up talking to the police officer before the girl's parents came to the office. The queen bee told the police officer, "This girl is a shoplifter and she is her mother. They both are lying that they aren't mother and daughter. So I can't talk to them. Anyway, can you take them?" The queen bee was explaining the situation, which was very one-sided. However, I explained to the police officer in my own way. "I'm not sure whether this girl did shoplift or not, but I'm sure we are not mother and daughter. Her parents will be here soon since I called them." The police officer listened to each explanation and asked the queen bee, "What made you think she was the mother of this girl?" And the queen bee said, "The other day I saw them talking to each other in a friendly way, and they looked like mother and daughter. You usually wouldn't smile like that at a stranger. That's why they're certainly mother and daughter." As she said that, I finally remembered her. Why I thought I'd seen the girl. The girl seemed to remember me too. "Ah, the key. Oh yeah, the key. I dropped my house key when I was riding my bike. She saw me drop it and chased after me and handed it to me. I surely talked to her a little at that time. I was relieved, so I might have even smiled." After hearing our explanation, the police officer was astounded by the queen bee, and she was blushing because of the facts. "What? So you're not really mother and daughter?" she asked me. So I said, "No, I told you over and over. Her real parents will be here soon." As soon as she heard that, she stopped talking. Then the police officer said, "For now, let me see security cameras." He asked me like that. I immediately thought I'd do as he asked. But the queen bee didn't let me do it for some reason. She said, "I checked the security cameras and they didn't capture that moment. But I caught her red-handed, so this girl was definitely shoplifting." But the police officer said, "I see, but I'll have to check it anyway." Then the queen bee turned very blue at this time. The reason for this was immediately apparent. Incredibly, the security camera had caught the queen bee putting snacks into the girl's bag. I found out this later. Just the other day, when I was asked by the queen bee to switch shifts again, I firmly refused because I had some commitments. Then she held a grudge against me and tried to give me pain. She wanted to let me know that if I resist her, I will be hurt. When all the facts came to light, her mother and the store manager arrived at the store. The police officer explained the whole situation to them. The queen bee was swearing and pale. The girl cried on her mother's chest, relieved that she had been proven innocent. The mother was glaring at the queen bee, of course. The manager felt he couldn't let it go, so he fired the queen bee on the spot. It surprised me. The manager told the queen bee, "We can't let this sort of thing happen. You are hereby dismissed." The queen bee said, "What? You're firing me? Isn't that a bit too much? I've worked here for over a decade now. If I were gone, it would be hard for you, right?" But he said, "I've heard bad things about you in the past. and I can't tolerate this kind of thing being done to everyone. Besides, if I let you stay, all the other part-timers might quit. I'm sorry, but this is a decision that needs to be made."
The queen bee panicked and said, "Oh no, then I apologize. I'm sorry for doing this. It was supposed to be harassment to Isabel, but I was all wrong. I'll never do anything like this again," she said desperately. But the manager said,
"Even you say so. I can't let you stay. It sets a bad example for this mother and daughter if I let it go. So don't come to work, please."
"Ugh, this is terrible," the queen bee said, and started to cry. But no one felt sorry for her. The police officer was taken aback, and the girl's mother seemed to have noticed the craziness of the queen bee. "They've been very sympathetic towards me," the manager was adamant. "I had no intention of taking the queen bee's side at all. So I kept my mouth shut and watched the whole thing unfold. The queen bee was successfully dismissed, and peaceful days have come to my workplace like never before. The other part-timers found out what had happened, and they worried about me and talked to me. They said, 'We're glad you're okay, Isabel. I'm also relieved now.' I'm glad the police officer listened carefully to what happened, and it also saved me that the evidence was caught on the security camera. I'm very happy to be working in a stress-free environment from now on." Later, the girl came into the store with her mother. I apologized to her, and she said it was okay. Of course, she was scared, but I was glad she smiled at me when she saw me. Besides, she said something unexpected. The girl said, "The lady was a troublemaker, wasn't she? It's good she's gone." I was blown away by what she had said. The girl was smiling, and so was her mother. The girl's strength really saved me too, so that's how we're going to settle the case. By the way, the queen bee hasn't appeared since that day. The manager said to her,
"If I found out the fact that you've been hanging around in front of the store or harassing the part-timers, then you'll have to go to the police this time."
His word was enough to punish her. So now I feel safe and I can work. Thank you for listening to me to the end. I'm going to work hard without the queen bee. Like Isabel told us, luckily she didn't get hurt by the queen bee. I'm sure the other part-timers were grateful for the queen bee's repression. The end of this story relieved the forum participants, and they felt good as they thought of the queen bee's consequence. What would you do if you had to go through the same thing that Isabel went through this time?
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.